All right. Hi there. This is Christy Daniels, and we are back with another quarantine, our first quarantine edition of Around the Table with Powerful Women. So I'm Christy Daniels.
I'm Joy Caffrey.
And I'm Wendy Love Edge.
And we are not quite sure what we're doing.
But we're taking risks and we're boldly moving forward.
And we are definitely more than 6 feet apart right now.
Social distancing.
Yes.
And this might be a new way that many people might want to start gathering on Zoom. I want to show a book real quick. I have a book group that was about to read this book, The Art of Gathering. And then we realized, oh, maybe it's not the best time to be reading this. Although I'm still going to go ahead and read it and think about how can we gather in places like Zoom and still make them meaningful.
Yeah.
Right. Would that be the art of not gathering, or is it still considered gathering?
Digital gathering.
Yeah.
We're digitally gathering.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, digitally gathering.
We're virtually gathering.
Virtually gathering, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because it's so important, right? I mean, we're isolated physically in our households for the most part, and our social fabric, our social connections are kind of like our immune system, a part of our immune system.
Mm-hmm.
There's a statistic that says that the not having social connections, not having that web of interaction and support is similar to your body as smoking a cigarette a day. And
Right.
So it's vital. It's really important. So how can we do that and also honor our body's needs and our desire to be well and not pass things on to each other?
Right. Well, if you notice on Facebook, the art and music community figured out a way immediately to continue to gather. Right.
I love that they're stepping up, right?
And but I think it's also part of the artist's mind, part of creating, especially with music. I think with visual art, I think with all of it, is having an audience and having someone to share it with or bounce ideas off of. It can be something that requires solitude, art, of course. I think if you're an artist, you definitely crave that, but I think there's always that component that's needed of our community, So I think they stepped up, and I also think it was out of their own realization that it was a necessity.
Right, because the urge to share was still there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I saw something, I saw the first episode of Stephen Colbert. It was the first night. Like, I don't think they had very much notice that they weren't going to have an audience.
Oh, I watched that too. Yeah.
And it was painful to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Because you realize as you're watching how vital the audience is and how interactive the experience is.
I noticed that too. Like, you're waiting for the laughs, and they were like, oh.
And he wasn't getting that feedback, that live feedback. And there was an element of magic that was just not there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we see that on my other show. Topher starts the Wendy Love Edge show with a little bit of stand-up now. And the first week, it didn't even occur to me how hard it would be for him to stand in front of the camera and tell a bunch of jokes, without a lot of the feedback, the audience. I can't imagine, on a larger scale too, what they're going through. I think they realized they just couldn't really do it without an audience. I think the initial intent was they were going to keep going without an audience, but now I notice they're playing reruns, so
yeah,
it doesn't really work well.
I know, and I think that kind of leads us into one element of this quarantine experience, which is we're realizing how important things are that we didn't really even give a second thought to. Now that we're in this situation, it's really changing our perspective. My perspective, I'll speak for myself. Things, if people weren't stocking shelves, I certainly wasn't prepared for this. I had the nudge a few months ago that, I need to start stocking things more deeply. But if people weren't stocking shelves, if people weren't driving trucks to give us supplies, if people weren't actually, showing up at hospitals and clinics and being willing to be on the front lines of this, I didn't really think about those things before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we take some things for granted without realizing that we're even doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when something like this happens, of course, we haven't had anything in our lifetimes on this scale, but
Right.
but when something, crisis happens, some things really obvious that you didn't see before. So it opens our eyes.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because for me, in the last year, I don't know, or even longer, I feel like there's a part of me that's been preparing for this or even something else coming. I guess every once in a while, like I'd be, let's say, comfortable in my bed with my nice warm sheets, and I'll have this thought of down the road when that might not be possible. Like, remember when you loved your warm sheets, or remember when you could take a shower whenever you wanted to? And so like it was jumping into the future to have me be present in the moment, to be grateful for what I'm having. And all of a sudden I feel like some of those flashbacks of those thoughts were coming back. Oh, this is what I was preparing for. Remember when you appreciated or you didn't know to appreciate toilet paper, right? Or hand soap, right? It was even hard for me to get hand soap at the store. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way, Joy. We've been talking about these kinds of things for the last almost a year, I would say, without any context. Like, and then weird things would happen. Like, somebody gave me a big box of all natural bar soaps. They were closing their shop, and they said, "Oh, just take them, and if you want to, give some away." And we gave a lot away, but we still have this big box of soap.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think when we start looking back and paying attention, it's very interesting. The universe is providing and giving us information all the time.
Little hints. Yeah. Yeah. I had to look up when toilet paper was created. So it was created in 1957. I'm sorry, not 1857. 1857.
Okay.
So before 1857, there wasn't toilet paper. And I think a lot of people should know that people used leaves or rags or corn husks. I was reading just so many different things that people used instead, or washing their, just using water. And anyway, so there's so many ways that we can take care of a need. Yeah. And
Right.
we might get dependent on one way.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought, Joy. Just opening our minds to see that maybe it would be a good exercise to think about some other thing that we do. This is about toilet paper, but 10 ways to do whatever it is without the usual way. I don't know.
Yeah.
To think about an example, because
Right.
it kind of opens your mind to that there are many possibilities. I don't have to feel like a victim, which
Right.
I think is partly what's been happening. People go into these victim behaviors.
Or scarcity mentality, right?
Yeah.
And they don't realize, wait, actually we do have other resources that we can use,
It's not the way we've always done it.
Right, yeah.
Right.
And one thing is, right now we're all still connected to the internet. So throwing out another, like a pandemic on top of another disaster would be wiping the internet away, right? And so how then would we reach out, or would we be more reliant on our local neighbors or walking? Or what do you do in a pandemic when you can't, right, be socializing with when you start to overlap challenges? So I think we can free the mind, I'm not saying this to add more fear or worry, but to add more creativity to,
Yeah, and the creativity, right? That's just the way, the creative mind of being able to make different connections that might not be obvious to other people, or also to learn to kind of rewind a little bit and go back to a more simplified way. Like, for example, I have my phone here, and I have like all the people who are important to me, right? They're in my phone. But what happens if we don't have cell service? Like, I could tell you my grandma, her phone number from when I was 5, and she still has the same phone number.
Right.
90, and I know it, memorized it, right? But my kids, other people, I don't really know. I just touch.
Yeah,
Voila, there. So
yeah, it is true. It's a good, might be a good exercise to make a list of those numbers. I don't even know my wife's number because it changed. Like she had the same number forever and then got a new one. And recently somebody asked me for her number and I had to look in my phone.
Yeah. I'm a little old fashioned still when I call my family. I don't always just hit contacts. I just dial their numbers and,
Oh,
on my phone. So, and I still remember the phone from my home in elementary school. It was it started with letters, AN63067.
right,
Yeah,
right.
they started with letters back then. And I can remember my best friend's phone numbers, my aunts, like you did with your grandmother. And right now I do have my kids, all three kids, and my parents' numbers memorized, and my closest friends. Yeah.
That's great. I think it's unusual today, but it's an important point. I mean, we have gotten used to a lot of different conveniences
Yeah.
that if they're removed, then, you know, the old way of doing things, we've all been educated in that way. So maybe just kind of looking back a little bit and thinking what would be nice to at least have as an emergency or as an alternative.
Mhm. I
Yeah.
think one of the things you said is really true is how um, I should speak for myself. I've become a person addicted to conveniences, right? And yeah, in so many different ways. In my home, I just expect things to be quick and easy and fast and effortless. And um, yeah, even buying our groceries versus growing them, or there's just so many ways that I know I'm addicted to convenience. And this is one of those time periods where we get to pause and look at that and say, is that something I want to continue with? Or
yeah, exactly. The what I'm thinking of is so I in a former life for about 16 years worked for IBM. And went through that age where everything was shifting from planning things out to having it on demand. And so I think we live in an on-demand era. And, I know I do have up till, say, the last 3 weeks. And, if I need food, I go buy it. I'm not planning because I know that store is going to be there. That's always been there for me, right? But I think this is an opportunity for us to do exercises that help, build new neural pathways of planning and considering possibilities and projecting and playing out different scenarios and being able to prepare ourselves and not just do that convenience. We have been trained to,
Mm-hmm.
to have that almost as a crutch. I mean, it's been an assumption, and we have to check our assumptions these days.
right. Yeah. We're coming off of automatic pilot behaviors.
Right.
Yeah.
I
We're
think
forced to.
there's a lot of opportunities, so I know when we were, we actually did start stocking up on some stuff a few months ago, a little bit at a time. And Angela said to me, well, how do you make a bread? Like, what if we wanted to make, and I was thinking, and she's 14 years younger than me. So her generation and beyond really, really into conveniences even more, and maybe didn't have those opportunities to learn those kinds of things. And I was like, oh yeah, I used to make my own bread. We can do that. If we have all the ingredients, we can make it ourselves. So it's just an example
Right.
of thinking a different way. And then I just wanted to mention too, if everybody really should try to start growing food. Grow your own food, put some seeds in the ground. It's that time anyway. It's getting to be that time. You can start indoors. You can order organic seeds online so that you don't have to go to the store. But I really feel that we need to be more independent. We need to, and then we also might have a surplus to help our neighbors, but self-reliance, we've gotten away from self-reliance.
Yeah,
And
one of the challenges we have with gardening in my front yard are the deer. So we now have an overpopulation of deer, and we had a deer fence up for a little bit. And anyway, the deer have been with us for a long time, but they weren't eating everything, and they've changed their diet. So I used to have a huge hydrangea plant. It's gone, and more of the plants are gone. And now, like, they just already have eaten my peonies out of my garden just as they were sticking the shrubs up.
Goodness.
And so that's another man-made problem.
Mm-hmm.
They've no natural predators, and they've ran out of room. And I live on the side of a hill.
Right. I talked to someone else in town who just said the same thing to me. I think that's a challenge for us to think about where, right in the community, could you share area to grow a little bit?
Yeah,
you know?
fenced in area. Yeah.
Yeah, but that is challenging.
But I'd like to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. We're actually this weekend, as we're recording this, we're moving. So it's a very disorienting time to be leaving neighbors and people in the familiar area and be picking up and moving to a different geographic location, different neighborhood, different I know nobody in that area, and so a very interesting challenge to an incentive to connect with neighbors, but then save social.
Yeah, how do you meet them?
Right.
It's like, oh, hi,
Ring the doorbell and run away. Hi.
Well, bring it with a glove on, stand 6 feet back.
Yeah.
Mask.
Right.
Yeah. So, but that's another thing, to reach out to neighbors, see if there is a common space where, food can be grown or resources can be shared. It's a time when, if you have extra little free pantries, libraries, to be able to stock those. Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed someone in Fayetteville, I think in Fayetteville, put out books, people do that, make the little libraries for neighborhoods, but she just made it a project in the last few days so that she could put it out there, and since people are home.
Yeah, and the food pantries, I love that people are making food pantries as well as the book libraries. Yeah.
I haven't seen that. So they're actually putting out food that could be shared.
Yeah, I think we have some here, but I was Renata was doing food pantries, right?
Oh yeah. There's one in front of Unity. There's one in front of the that's on Weddington Drive if you're in Northwest, if you're in Fayetteville. A lot of churches have those. One on Rolling Hills Drive. Little free libraries all over the place.
Yeah, I like having both, that we have both in our town.
Yeah, that's great. I actually didn't know about the pantries, so glad to know that. And if people watching this know of some in the area, just list them underneath. Yeah.
So I think we also were going to talk a little bit. I'm not sure if we have time for this, Joy. Or we have time?
Okay, here's the funny thing. I started the timer, then I paused it because you were doing some of that stuff, and then I started again. But so this says that we have 17 more minutes, and then I would probably minus 3 or 4 minutes from that. So
Okay.
we'll have like 14 more minutes, I'm guessing.
So one of the things that I wanted us to talk about a little bit was just I think it's pretty in our face, the negatives, the things that are, the challenges, the hurdles that we all have to face, from medication to, social distancing and all the other things. School, like school, my granddaughter is now online learning, day to day from her teacher. It's very odd. I mean, she's excited right now about it, but she misses her friends. But I also thought it would be helpful for us to talk about some of the positives, things that because my news feed sometimes when I look through it, it's filled with problems and challenges. And so maybe some of the benefits, a focus and a highlight of what is possible through this experience. I'd love to hear your thoughts and what you're seeing and what you're thinking about.
For myself, like I seem to like to rise to the occasion under this type of stress. I'm not sure why. So for me, I'm putting myself more out there in my own Facebook group, whereas when we're not under crisis like this, it's like, oh, I'll get to it or I'll do it. And now it's like, no, show up because your community needs you. And so it's helping me to override my own visibility challenges. So I appreciate that. It's I already did a drawing the other day in the house, you know, like my intention is to just to draw more with pencil and charcoal, to paint more in my art studio, to take care of those things, the background things in my business. So if I'm not seeing clients here, then what else can I be doing to support my business? So I feel really stimulated creatively, creativity wise. I don't know, I'll start with that and pass the baton a little bit. And
Yeah, I think so. Personally, for me, the positives that I've seen, one of the things that I do to help manage anxiety is get involved with all different projects and spend time, productive time. It helps me to just focus on other things, and so having to stop, right? For the most part, I can still do a few things. You know, we did. We filmed an episode of my show here. You know, there's a few things I can do, but I'm having a lot more time. And so I'm going back to the tools that I was using, other tools that I was using for anxiety management, and doing a lot more self-reflection and resting. I mean, I had a couple of days here where I really just rested. And it's been a long time since I've done that. So I think sometimes a forced stop when, you know, when you realize it's something you need to give yourself and should have been happening all along, you know. So I think that's been a positive for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and I hear that about the forced pause, right? The forced, you know, at one point I was sitting and I'm like, this is kind of like feeling like Mother Nature put us in timeout. And then I, you know, and it's like, wait a second, you know, you're a problem, you know, you can't do it for global warming. You can't do it for these other reasons, but you know what? You'll do it for like your own self-preservation. So you're a top. And then I saw memes going around to that effect too. And it's like, yes, it's kind of how it feels. But for us, you know, I had been, you know, putting out to the universe. I really wish I could slow down a little bit more. You know, we have you know, a daily commute both ways to take my granddaughter to school, which is frantic and hectic with little kids. And a part of me was asking to be able to not have to do that drive, to not have to have the frenzy. And so what I've noticed the last couple of days has been, you know, I did give myself like 3 days to freak out. So, but I, you know, I noticed that there's a relaxed, there's a different level, you know, there's different stresses, but there's a relaxed vibe now. I can hear it in the less traffic. I don't, you know, hear the traffic at the same time as I used to. It's almost as if hibernation of winter has kind of been extended a little bit, that vibe that happens over winter time. So I'm appreciating that. There's other stressors that kind of balance it out. But all in all, that feels a lot better. And for me, it's just, it narrows things down. So it takes, I'm one of those people who likes to see all the options, and I want to pick from like all the options. I want to have like a whole smorgasbord to choose from. But when those options are narrowed, it seems to be like the priority just naturally rises. It's just naturally there and in my face. And so I'm appreciating the removal of that as a distraction. Be able to kind of like simplify my own mental processes and choices, and what I'm doing to, you know, with strategy. And so, and then I also feel like I love the things that I'm seeing around where there are like birds, that you can hear birds chirping in the skies are clearing in China. And
Yeah, I like hearing that. Earth is healing herself.
yeah, and
She has more space to heal herself with everything slowing down.
we
Yeah.
can see
Yeah.
the effects. We can, have that contrast of the effects of us not moving around. And it just seems more visible to me. So I love that's a possibility that more people will see that, and how our actions actually affect the
Right.
world.
Yeah. Because I think just because there's so many of one, we're more connected than we've ever realized, right? That's showing up. And the collectiveness of us has more of an impact on the earth than we give credit to. And this is showing how much it really does by pausing on all of that. Yeah. I'm also noticing how much I touch my face.
Yeah, right.
That's been hard to break that habit for me. And someone suggested just start touching your hair a lot more. Face, just start rubbing your hair.
It is a hard thing, and I think so many people are realizing how much they do that.
Yeah.
It takes at least 21 days to change behavior, so it's just. But then you have to really pay attention all the time.
Right. Yeah, I'm noticing a lot how much I talk with my hands a lot, and I.
Right. Yeah, me too.
And in my practice, I have people, actually touching, to do.
It's happening. Yeah.
Right.
So true. Right. Yeah.
Before, washing your hands after.
Right. Wash before and after, for sure. Yeah, Christy, I just wanted to say I saw a piece on that on the news about the collective pause and its effect on the environment.
Yeah.
And at the end of the piece, I felt so happy and hopeful that people who have been climate change deniers and all will actually see that. But then the question is, will they believe it? Because I think part of the problem right now is people don't know what is true and what is not true.
Yeah. And also that might not be reported on their news stations.
Right.
So they just might not see it because it's not exposed to them. Yeah.
Right.
That's one of our challenges in this divisive climate that we live in. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a hard thing, and so they don't know who to trust, and that's why still people saying that the whole thing is a hoax, or that they try to list, well, there's not that many cases, but then when you try to inject some logic and say there haven't been enough test kits, so you can't, the cases are now going up exponentially because there's more test kits. So I think it's really hard right now. People have a lot of time on their hands, though. So maybe start to go within and find their compass for truth, Like you said at the beginning of this, tune into our pussies, right? It's like, where are they tuning in on themselves?
Yeah.
Whether information is true or not true.
Yeah.
Everyone can access that in whatever way.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that now is a time where, you're pointing that out, that if you can't trust what you're seeing, you can't trust, what can you trust?
Yeah, what's that inner compass?
Wisdom, that connection, and cultivating that connection and your trust in it, the information that it gives you.
Yeah. I want to talk, one of my challenges is that my parents are 85 years old, 86 years old, and they, because of their news sources, they didn't think this was as serious as it was until just, a couple of days ago. And they were still going out in public, and that's challenging for me. The other part that's challenging is they live in Florida, where there's a very large population of elderly, and so the hospitals are not going to be able to handle the load that they have, right? Florida is going to look a lot more like Italy. And so I've always imagined that at the end of my life, at the end of my parents' life, I'd be able to spend time with them, right? And if something happens to them and we're all in shutdown and quarantine, I can't even go and be with them. And so I'm looking at that, reality within me, and I'm really giving myself time to process the emotions as they arise, whether it's the fear or the anxiety or the anger or frustration when you hear different news pieces. But to start, I'm really allowing myself to it could be a real reality, Joy, that you might not be able to be with your parents when they need you. And so that's been challenging. And that also kind of, my heart goes out to those that are getting seriously ill with the coronavirus and they're not getting that human touch, right? Because everybody's in these suits. I know that you want to talk about the positive, but I also wanted to look at what's the reality of the other things going on. And I have so much compassion for that distancing that's happening with those that are sick. Anyway, I just want to touch on that too, from a place of compassion. And
yeah, it is true. The not having the human touch. I think we saw this, we lived through, what happened with HIV and how frightened everyone was and not wanting to touch. And this we know actually we need to not touch, So, there's a lot of things to think about. And I think if, our health workers are so amazing to still keep putting themselves in that.
Yeah.
And trying to comfort people as best they can.
A lot of selflessness in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're getting close to we probably have another minute or two left. And so you were talking about touch. It's like, maybe that's why poetry is needed. When we can't reach out and touch physically, we can, use our words to caress someone, or our music to soothe someone. So I want to, again, put that hope or spark out there that we can keep reaching out to loved ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I also don't think that, I think we should also just remind ourselves that, we can do self-massage.
Right.
And yes, true, that's not another person's touch, but it is touch. And it really
and just wash your hands first.
yeah, but it really helped.
Exactly, yeah. I had a whole book on self-massage one time that I saw about all the different points.
Because, it'll help calm down our nervous systems, and that's what can help us stay calm, stay, able to access higher level thinking, more creative thinking, and not do knee-jerk, short-sighted choices.
Right.
Yeah.
I think if take this time, tune in to yourself and give yourself what you need to the best of your ability. When you're not able to reach out. But we do live in this age where, look, we can talk on FaceTime and see each other and make live feeds and reach out even on the phone. Now we have time to sit and talk on the phone where maybe you didn't have it before.
Yeah. So, maybe our next guest will also be on a Zoom quarantine.
It might be.
So we're at our time's end, I'm guessing. So I want to thank everyone for watching another episode of Around the Screen, the virtual table, the virtual screen with powerful women. And I want to do a toast. Here's to an edgy and a soulful, joyful life.
Right.
Even under different circumstances. Cheers.
Wishing you all well-being.
Be well.
Watching.
Bye.
Bye.